welcome to my channel. This is my first YouTube video. This channel will focus on true crime, disappearances, paranormal stories, and historical genealogical facts. Today's video will focus on H.H. Holmes, sometimes dubbed the Beast of Chicago or America's first serial killer. Holmes was a con artist and serial killer active in the late 1800s and located in the US. Although it is unlikely for him to be the first serial killer in the US, this will be the first documented case. I have known about this case for years and it has always interested me, but while researching this, I was surprised to find a lot of the infamous key points in this case are complete fiction or had just been exaggerated. This case then becoming more of a legend rather than a completely factual recount of the events in the story. Hopefully I can give a clearer, more factual insight into today's case. With that being said, let's get into today's video. Born on May the 16th, 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, located in the US, to Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price. Herman Webster Mudgett was the third child born to the couple. H.H. Holmes, as he later became, is one of the most interesting, formidable con artists and serial killers to ever have lived. Herman's parents, Levi and Theodate, were both descendants from immigrants which had first settled in this area of New Hampshire, where Herman was born. Having had 2 children already, Herman had older siblings, an older sister Ellen and an older brother Arthur. Mr. and Mrs. Mudgett did go on to have 2 other children after Herman, a younger brother Henry and a younger sister Mary. From my research, I found the 1870 United States Federal Census. As you can see, there are a few spelling mistakes on Herman's name, however ancestry users have corrected this. Raised in a Methodist household, the family had accumulated wealth from a background in farming. As a child, Herman showed a keen interest in the medical field. Some information I have found suggests Herman's interest in medicine took a more sinister turn, with him abducting animals, which he would later perform surgery on. This is possibly fictionalized, with police trying to profile him as a serial killer after his crimes were brought to light. As a youth, an accident occurred where one of Herman's friends died, and he was held responsible for this accident, although no charges were brought. Again, this isn't confirmed. Age 16, Herman graduated high school. He had attended Phillips Exeter Academy, located in Exeter, in New Hampshire. After graduating high school, Herman took a teaching job before marrying Clara Lovering on July the 4th, 1878. Herman and Clara had met in childhood and had fallen deeply in love. Lovering was born to a farmer named Samuel and his wife Lucy Lovering, both of New Hampshire. Clara was born on the 19th of July, 1860. Aged 18, Herman attended the University of Vermont in Burlington, Vermont, but after 2 years he dropped out, citing boredom. He and his wife, Clara's first and only child, a son Robert Lovering Mudgett, was born on the 3rd of February, 1880, in Loudon, Merrimack County, New Hampshire. It was shown on the United States Federal Census of 1880 that Herman, his wife Clara, and their son Robert were living in Clara's father Samuel's home. Herman's occupation is listed as farm at home. Clara's father Samuel is a widowed farmer at this point, and his sons, Frank and Edwin, are still residing at home. 2 years later, in 1882, Herman enrolled at Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery, before graduating 2 years later in 1884 after doing well and completing his exams. While attending the University of Michigan, Herman worked at the college's anatomy lab under Chief Anatomy Instructor Professor William James Herdman. Working in an anatomy lab, Herman had access to medical cadavers, which is bodies that have been donated for scientific purposes. Herman, along with the Chief of Anatomy, would steal the bodies to experiment on, which involved Herman using the bodies for dissection. The two would also go on to go grave robbing, using their bodies for more experiments. Herman didn't just use the bodies for medical purposes, he would frequently take out life insurance policies on these bodies, giving them a fake name and claiming they had died. Herman would mutilate the bodies beyond recognition, so it would be unclear to identify whether the person was who he claimed them to be. While studying, Herman became an apprentice in New Hampshire under Nahum White, a noted advocate in favour of human dissection. By this time, Herman's marriage to Clara was in trouble. Housemates that lived with the couple at the time noted Herman's aggression and violence towards his wife, with her ultimately escaping from him and moving back to New Hampshire with their son. The two separated but were never officially divorced. Herman briefly lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where eyebrows were raised when a little boy died, reportedly after taking some medicine prescribed to him by Herman. Again, no charges were brought, and Herman again moved cities. This time, in August 1886, Herman had moved to Chicago, Illinois, now going under a new name, Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, or H.H. Holmes as he is now infamously known. From this point on, I will refer to Herman as Holmes. Holmes had changed his name before arriving in Chicago to avoid being detected by authorities for any scams which he had been involved in. This included grave robbing as well as the suspicious death of the little boy in Philadelphia. Holmes had many different aliases, often switching it up what the H's meant or stood for to avoid detection by the authorities. Holmes settled into Chicago, meeting Elizabeth S. Holton, who owned a drugstore at the northwest corner of South Wallace Street and West 63rd Street in Englewood, Chicago. Perhaps out of pity for the new gent in town, Elizabeth gave Holmes a job at her drugstore. Holmes proved to be a hard-working employee, however, later purchasing the store from Elizabeth and her husband. By late 1886, Holmes had married again, this time to Myrta Belknap. Holmes had reportedly filed for divorce from his first wife a few weeks before marrying Myrta, although reports suggest she was never even informed of this. The divorce between Holmes and Clara was never finalised, thus making Holmes a bigamist. A year later, Holmes purchased an empty lot from the Holtons, which sat opposite the drugstore, in which he planned to build apartments, as well as another drugstore. Holmes's second child, a daughter, Lucy Theodate Mudgett, was born to him and his wife, Myrta, in 1889. Around 1891, Holmes took a mistress, a married woman named Julia Smith. Julia Smith was the wife of Ned Connor, who worked on the first floor of the building in a jewellery shop. Together they had a daughter, Pearl. Holmes's and Julia's affair was not a secret for long, and after learning of his wife's tryst with Holmes, Ned upped and left town, leaving his wife and daughter to live with Holmes. Both Julia and Pearl would tragically become the first known victims of Holmes, with them both disappearing on Christmas Eve 1891. Holmes would later claim Julia had died of an abortion, which he had performed. He would switch from this story to him never having actually killed Julia. Holmes's profession in medicine at the time did not make him a qualified conductor of abortion, which was an illegal procedure at the time. This was also extremely risky. As for Julia's daughter Pearl, Holmes said he poisoned her to hide the circumstances of her mother's death. Both bodies were never found, and it is uncertain what happened to them, though remains of a child's body, around the same age as Pearl, was discovered in the murder castle's basement when Holmes's crimes were revealed. By 1892, Holmes's building was well underway. Holmes, initially intending for the building to be 2 stories, he later added a 3rd floor that year. The building was somewhat completed, although the 3rd story of the building was largely unfurnished and not completed fully. It consisted of vacant apartments and used mainly as storage, with reports later on that the building's interior was rather dull and nondescript. He planned his intentions to use the 3rd floor of the building as rooms for a hotel, adding that many tourists would soon be flocking to Chicago for the World Fair, also known as the World's Columbian Exhibition. This would be taking place the following year in 1893. Although some reports suggest Holmes was intending to abduct and murder tourists of the World Fair, it would seem more likely that Holmes's intentions were more financially based. The building was never actually used as a hotel, despite its infamous name. Briefly moving off topic, the World's Columbian Exhibition was a huge world fair which was held in celebration of the explorer Christopher Columbus. It was the 40th anniversary of him discovering the New World, now known to us all today as America. The hotel, dubbed the Murder Castle, has varying reports on its content. Some reports suggest the hotel had rooms that just led to nowhere, gas chambers, trapdoors and a basement, where Holmes could dispose of his victims' bodies, and rooms constructed for the sole purpose of torture. These are most likely fictional. Although the building did reportedly have many hidden rooms, these were supposedly used for hiding furniture, in which Holmes had bought on credit and didn't have any intention of paying for. Reports of the house have rooms constructed purely for medieval torture, or rooms designed to fit no more than a body in, seem unconfirmed and are likely exaggerated by journalists of the time. Other reports suggest Holmes had solely purchased the lot and constructed his Hotel of Horrors with the intention of luring tourists to the property to kill. Again, this is debatable. From research, Holmes did have a keen interest in human dissection and death. His motives for killing could be more financially based. By May of 1892, a woman named Emmeline Sigrande began working in the hotel. By the December of that year, she had vanished. Rumours suggested she and Holmes had become romantically involved, leading her to becoming pregnant. In what would seem to be another botched abortion, Sigrande was never seen again. Holmes would later claim Emmeline moved to Europe as she had gotten married there. Not long after this, another woman, named Edna Van Tassel, also went missing while working at the building. None of these victims were ever seen again. Around this time, Holmes met Benjamin Pitezel, a carpenter who was born in Illinois in 1856. Married to Carrie Alice Canning, the couple had 6 children, one of whom died in infancy in 1892. Pitezel, with a criminal background, worked with Holmes on many scams, the two forming a close friendship, and Holmes using Pitezel as his right-hand man in his illegal schemes. Although Pitezel was unaware of Holmes's murders, he would aid him in financially based scams. Pitezel was used as Holmes's henchman, with Holmes bringing the smarts to the table and Pitezel using his strength. Some sources stated he was Holmes's tool, his creature. Holmes's 5th known victim was Minnie Williams, a one-time actress who had moved from Boston to Chicago. She was originally from Texas and born into a wealthy family. With Minnie owning some land, Holmes's interest fell on claiming this for himself. Initially, Holmes thought he could swindle Minnie out of this plot of land, until he realised that the deed to the land was in joint ownership with her sister Nanny. Holmes and Minnie began a relationship. With no time lost at all, Holmes managed to convince Minnie and her sister Nanny to sign over the land to a man called Alexander Bond. Alexander Bond was an alias of Holmes. Minnie obviously never met Alexander Bond before signing this land over. Lured to Chicago under false pretenses, Nanny arrived to see her sister Minnie, and this was the last time either of them was seen again. Holmes's purpose for killing the two sisters was likely to claim life insurance policies on the two. Holmes upped and left Chicago after the murders, moving to Texas not long after. Marrying for a 3rd time, this time to a woman named Georgiana York, Holmes was still married to both Myrta, back in Chicago, and Clara back in New Hampshire. Not long after marrying Georgiana, Holmes served time in prison for theft. While serving time, Holmes met Marion Hedgepeth, a famous Wild West outlaw, serving a 25-year sentence. Marion Hedgepeth was nicknamed the Handsome Bandit, the Debonair Bandit, the Derby Kid, and the Montana Bandit. The two conspired to fake Holmes's death and claim a $10,000 life insurance payout, with the two splitting the money. Hedgepeth, obviously stuck in prison, gave Holmes the name of a good lawyer he knew to help conduct the scheme. Holmes's name by now was recognised by insurance companies, so he would have to use another alias, though this did not end up working out, and that part of the plan was abandoned. Drafting in his longtime friend and accomplice, Benjamin Pitezel, to help with the plan, Pitezel agreed to help his friend with the fraud. Holmes managed to persuade Pitezel that they would fake Pitezel's death instead of his and give Pitezel a cut of the money, something Pitezel quickly agreed to as he had a wife and children to feed. Pitezel's family were all in on this scheme. The plan was that Pitezel would claim to be a scientist with a different name, and that he would die during an experiment gone wrong. Holmes and Pitezel would then use a medical cadaver, mutilate the corpse beyond recognition, and pass this off as the scientist. Before the plan was due to go ahead, however, Pitezel got cold feet and backed out. Holmes decided he would carry on the insurance scam, but kill Pitezel and claim the money for himself. Sources state that Holmes got Pitezel drunk, rendered him unconscious, then burnt him alive. The Pitezel family, unaware that it was indeed Benjamin who had been killed, and not a medical cadaver, went to identify the body, and were paid out for the life insurance money. Holmes, wanting the money for himself, decided he needed to kill the Pitezel family. Thinking they would be reunited with Peitzel, who Holmes had stated was hiding out in London, Peitzel's wife Carrie agreed for Holmes to take 3 of their children, and they would split up into 2 groups to avoid detection on their way to be reunited with Peitzel. Holmes ended up murdering the 3 children, daughter Alice, another daughter Nellie, and a son Howard. Howard was murdered first, with sources stating Holmes drugged the boy before chopping up his body and burning it on a stove. Teeth belonging to the boy were found in the house that they had been staying in. Holmes took the Peitzel daughters to Canada, where he then murdered them. The girls were reportedly gassed to death. Their bodies were found naked and buried under the floor of the house. Police began their search of the murder castle, discovering remains of some of his victims and the bones of Pearl Smith, the daughter of Julia Smith, Holmes's first victim. This was discovered in the basement. Holmes was then questioned by police, sometimes admitting to several murders, other times completely denying it. Sources state he once admitted to 27 murders, but then he would retract his confessions and deny murdering anybody. Research suggests that Holmes was a compulsive liar and would lose track of what was the truth or what was complete fiction. Sources state that a newspaper wanted to run a story on Holmes and his infamous murder castle, offering Holmes a payout if he admitted to his crimes. Holmes went along with this story, but it is likely to have been exaggerated by the press, and even Holmes himself in details, if he was under the impression he would receive money. Holmes was found guilty of Benjamin Peitzel's murder only, receiving the death sentence as punishment. Holmes was hanged at Philadelphia State Prison on May 7, 1896. Before Holmes's execution, he asked for one last request. He stated he wanted his body to be dug 10 feet deep, the average grave being dug around 6 foot deep, and his body encased in cement, due to his fears that people would dig up his body and dissect him. Buried in Holy Cross Cemetery in Yeadon, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, though his grave is unmarked. What became of the infamous murder castle is rather interesting, as the building ended up burning down in 1895 while Holmes was in custody. Because of the fire, most of the gruesome evidence was destroyed. I couldn't seem to find a reason why the house burnt down, but what was left of it, after it was demolished, is no longer there today. Could someone who knew Holmes have destroyed the murder castle in hopes of concealing any more evidence that lay there? I'd be interested to know your thoughts and theories on the comments below. The land in which the murder castle once stood is now left of the Englewood Post Office, which has stood there now for many years. The infamous legacy of H.H. Holmes is undeniable, with him becoming inspiration for fictionalised serial killers we see on TV. I will quickly do a follow-up on what became of the people involved in the case of this macabre. Holmes's first wife, Clara, lived out her days in New Hampshire, she too marrying again in 1906 after Holmes's death. Clara married John Peverley. The two were buried together in Maple Grove Cemetery in Canterbury, New Hampshire. Holmes's son Robert married a woman named Alexandra Gilbert in 1904. They had 2 sons, Maurice Lovering Mudgett and Harold Bertram Mudgett. Robert died in 1956 in New Hampshire and is buried in Massachusetts. Holmes's second wife Myrta reportedly held on to the surname Holmes and the notoriety of her dead spouse's crimes. Myrta and the couple's daughter Lucy would move to Minnesota after Holmes's death, settling into rural life. Both mother and daughter would find work as school teachers. During the First World War, Lucy would go on to become a secretary of the Red Cross, an organisation that helps people recover from disasters. Lucy volunteered to work in the war-ravaged France during 1918, where she met her future husband, James Douglas Hunter, who was from Duluth, Minnesota. The two were married in 1919 and lived in Michigan. The marriage broke down in 1923, and the two were divorced. Lucy, however, married for a second time in 1927 to John Thomas Moss, a Canadian national. The two lived together in Chicago, but again this marriage broke down too. The two never divorced but lived separately until John's death in 1937, and Lucy being listed as his wife on his death certificate. In 1956, when Lucy died, she chose to have her ashes rest with her late husband. As for the Peitzel family, Peitzel's widower Carrie would go on to remarry again, to Peter Van Arsdale. Despite Carrie somewhat having a criminal streak, I can't imagine how she recovered from 3 of her children's deaths at the hands of Holmes. Carrie died in 1929, aged 70, and was laid to rest in Washington State. The two remaining Peitzel children, Dessa and Horton, who had escaped a grisly end like their siblings, went on to live into adulthood. Both would go on to have families of their own. From my research on this video, a lot of the story of H.H. Holmes does seem to have been exaggerated, making this story more of a legend than an actual historical account, though I hope today I've offered a little bit more of a factual account of the H.H. Holmes case. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching. I would be interested to know your feedback and thoughts on today's video, so don't hesitate to leave a comment below. If you've enjoyed today's video, feel free to subscribe. I will be back soon with another video. Goodbye for now, and see you next time.